10, still here, that's all me. Black love 2D. Damn.
Hello, beautiful humans. I'm so glad to have you back with us for our last session of the day. I'm going to give a few housekeeping things and then pass it off to Allison to round us out. So, obviously, first of all, we're so grateful that you spent your whole Saturday with us. Hello, beautiful humans. I'm so glad to have you back with us for our last session of the day. Hearing my own voice. Okay. And so first I wanted to mention that there will be a post email. So an email will go out on Monday afternoon with our post-event survey. So you can let us know what you thought of this, what you liked, what you didn't like. We would really appreciate your feedback. It will also include the resource folder that we've been mentioning all day. So you'll get hecka resources that will lead you to all kinds of good information. And we also will send a form with a form that you can fill out if you were part of Rula and all of our other amazing presenters' storytelling breakout today. So if you're interested in continuing the conversation with Rula and the rest of our presenters, you can fill out that form, and there will be more in the future for you to do, hopefully soon. And then also the replays will be available. So we have replays of all of our sessions for today. They are already up. And you can just click on any session in the schedule and you should be able to review them. So that is there. And then lastly, we have live captioning available. So that is at the green button at the bottom of your screen. And shout out to Norma from White Coat Captioning for doing our captions for these plenaries. So I'm going to pass it off now. Thanks, y'all.
Sorry, working on the unmute. You all are going to hear a baby crying in the background. Sorry. So I'm just going to take us through what we've done in this summit. It feels like it's been just an hour, but we have been together since last night and have covered so much ground. So we kicked off the summit last night with Gina Breedlove, who grounded us in a ritual of sound and healing so we could really reconnect with our body and spirit and kind of set the intention for our work moving forward. And then we had a session on reproductive justice and what it means for us in this moment here in Georgia. And concluded with some breakout groups where we got into some really deep conversations about the framework and what it means for our work and the various issues we care about in our communities. Then we kicked off today with an opening plenary where we heard from Oriaku Njoku, the executive director of the National Network of Abortion Funds, who shared their vision for abortion access in Georgia, the South, and across the U.S. We then had an Abortion 101 training where we learned what an abortion is, what it means to access care, so that we could really demystify abortion and abortion access and really all feel really confident and comfortable in talking about abortion care. We then had a lunch session, optional lunch session where people could come together and have conversations over food and get to know each other a little bit more. Followed by a breakout block where we talked about RJ and faith, we talked about RJ and voting, and we talked about RJ and economic justice. And then we had 2 skill building sessions where we could really deepen and refine the skills that we have, led by some incredible community members doing this work on a day-to-day. So we had a storytelling session where we talked about how to shape our personal narrative for public leadership. We had an abortion conversation lab. So many times we are asked, how do we talk about abortions with our friends and loved ones? And so that session really went deeply into those candid, close, personal conversations that we all are having, but often feel like we may need a little bit more support. And so that session helped us kind of get to that place. And then we talked about protecting ourselves and others from criminalization as these new laws continue to pop up in Georgia and across the South. There's many questions about how we keep ourselves safe or safer and the tools we have to do that. So that session went deeper into that. The final skill building block, we talked about local advocacy and what it means to work in our cities and counties to advance policy change. We had a session on what is organizing, led by the Midwest Academy Institute. to help us learn about doing deeper, more meaningful organizing in our communities. And now we are in the closeout plenary, where we will receive words from Kwajelyn Jackson, who will be introduced shortly by Rula. So that's where we are. I'm going to hand it over to Rula.
Okay, thank you so much, Allison. I am really thrilled that Kwajelyn Jackson was able to join us today, despite having a super busy day. Thank you so much for joining us from where you are, Kwajelyn. Let me introduce you formally, and to everybody else here, I just want to say that we're really fortunate to have the leaders that we do in Georgia, and to have the relationships that we do within this movement. That will keep us, I believe, sustained for the future. So I just hope that each of you gets to come into these blessings more and more. So here we go. Okay. Kwajelyn Jackson currently serves as Executive Director at Feminist Women's Health Center in Atlanta, Georgia, an independent, nonprofit, feminist, multi-generational, multiracial, reproductive health, rights, and justice organization that provides compassionate abortion care in the South. Since 2013, she has led the expansion of Feminist Women's Health Center's statewide and national impact, and deepened its community partnerships, leading the organization's civic engagement, advocacy, education, and outreach teams before becoming the organization's first Black woman executive director in 2018. A third-generation graduate of Spelman College, Kwajelyn continues a family legacy of racial justice, anti-oppression, and reproductive justice activism. She has a BA in economics and an MS in urban policy studies from the Andrew Young School of Public Policy at Georgia State University. Prior to joining Feminist, she spent 3 years as the program manager for Wonder Root Community Arts Center and 8 years as a credit risk manager with Wachovia Bank's Community Development Finance Group. A respected voice on reproductive justice movement building, Kwajelyn is often sought after on the national level. She sits on the board of directors for All Options Abortion Care Network and the Black Mamas Matter Alliance. Kwajelyn is interested in opportunities to use a reproductive justice lens to spark dialogue, transform perspectives, develop leaders, and cultivate change. It is my privilege and honor to introduce for our closing keynote a true luminary in our movement, Kwajelyn Jackson.
Thank you very much, Rula. I appreciate the kind words, and luminary feels really big as a thing to live into, but I'm grateful that I was able to be with you all this afternoon, and I hope that what I'm able to share connects with all of the things that you've undoubtedly heard over the course of your time in this summit. So I'm Kwajelyn Jackson, and I am the executive director at Feminist Women's Health Center. I'm a Black woman who was raised in the Midwest, but who is rooted in the South. And I come from a legacy of Black women who have been called to create change around them. I'm not the first in my family to do very many things. I come from a long line of Spelman women and historically Black college graduates. My grandmothers and my mother were all educators. My great-grandmother had a teaching degree. I still have her diploma. I still have the bound master's thesis from my grandmother's time at Clark College and Atlanta University. I think about my ancestors a lot when I do work like this, when I'm speaking to groups, when I'm standing behind podiums, when I'm addressing a crowd. I think about the words that were in my foremothers' throats. I think about the courage that they had to stand in their truth, to talk about the things that they had experienced, and to try to carve out a small place for themselves in an unjust world. And so I really acknowledge and hold that privilege really close to me, and never take for granted what that foundation has done to get me to where I am. So I just want to sort of dedicate a little bit of this afternoon to them. I am sure that you've heard many, many things about Feminist Women's Health Center from my colleagues who were a part of the training over the course of this weekend. So you know a little bit about what we do, but I wanted to take at least a little bit of time to talk about where we're going, and also acknowledge the legacy upon what Feminist Women's Health Center sits. As the first Black executive director of Feminist Women's Health Center, I deeply believe that reproductive justice is the thing that will get us free. It is critical to our collective liberation and has to be centered and tangible in everything that we do. The Black women who developed the reproductive justice framework did so because they believed that the privacy-based, choice-based movement that they found themselves in was insufficient to actually speak to their lived experiences, to reflect all of the challenges that they were facing and the opportunities that existed for true community connection. It's clear to all of us at this moment that the legal right to abortion will continue to be in flux, will continue to be oscillated from triumph to tragedy. And though it can never be diminished in our work, it also cannot be the only centerpiece of our work. And so I feel that it is even more critical at this time for us to deepen our analysis and our understanding of the breadth of reproductive justice. We will never abandon abortion care, but we know that's not the only thing our communities need. At Feminist Center, we envision a world where all of our decisions about our bodies, pregnancy, sexuality, family, and safety are honored, protected, and treated with dignity, because reproductive justice is reflected and experienced in everything that we do. To realize that kind of vision, we need both the agility and the stability to meet our community's needs, to evolve and adapt to the way that the world will change around us, to develop and grow leaders who will replace us, who will continue to build upon that legacy, so that we can withstand all of the political instability, all of the ways that abortion laws will change over time, and more holistically serve our communities, the communities that we are a part of. So we are planning to expand our gender affirming care, to grow our wellness care, to better support fertility, pregnancy, birth, parenting, in addition to continuing to provide compassionate abortion care. My goal is to make reproductive justice tangible. But we know that Feminist Center is not alone in this fight. We are not doing this by ourselves. We are one point in a vast ecosystem that is working to bring us towards that collective liberation. We just want to play the part that we can play in making that vision a reality, to connect our vision to the visions of Urge, the visions of Sister Song, the visions of Amplify, the visions of NAPOF. We want to make sure that all of those visions are in the same direction, moving in parallel lines, supporting one another. That collaboration, that constellation of work, that building that depth in our ranks, those are the things that get us free. That's the legacy we want to continue. When I first started doing social justice work, I felt like I was starting completely over. I had worked in corporate America. I worked in banking for nearly a decade. And to be perfectly honest with y'all, it was miserable. It was painful to be in that space, to feel like I was actually a part of harming the communities that I wanted to care for. So I left all of that behind, and I worked as an unpaid intern at a tiny art and social change organization. But the critical piece that happened for me during that time is I got an opportunity to meet the people and the organizations that were doing the work that I wanted to do. I got to build those relationships. I started just showing up at everybody's meeting, sitting in the back of the room at everybody's workshop, going to everyone's rally, getting on everyone's newsletter so that I could know what was happening, so that I could understand what was happening, who were the subject area experts on the things that I cared about the most. After a while, I started to show up more and volunteer. So I wanted to be the one who would help to set up the chairs, or, help to hand out flyers at the door, or get on the phones and phone bank. In part because I wanted to know these people. I wanted to, have them know me. I wanted them to see me and recognize me when I came in. I wanted to feel like I was someone that could be relied upon, that I could be trusted to follow through, to follow instructions, to go where I was sent. And over time, being reliable, being consistent, being trustworthy, it helped me to grow into the voice that I wanted to develop. It helped me to not only build that invaluable trust that is so necessary for collaboration, but it also helped me to sharpen my analysis. I had lots of opinions. I came from a social justice family. My mother had done anti-oppression work for almost my whole life. So I had lots of feelings and opinions. Even though I wasn't a women's studies major at Spelman, Black feminism is in the atmosphere of Spelman College. And so I felt like I had, a tiny bit of understanding about what the work looks like. But being in spaces with folks who are working on abolition, or working on the environment, or working on immigration helped me to complicate my opinions, helped me to sharpen and refine the ways that I understood intersectionality and our interconnectedness. And at one of those meetings, one of those times that I was volunteering, someone who I had been able to build trust with, someone who saw me, saw sort of my authentic self, said, "Did you know that there is a volunteer coordinator position open at Feminist Women's Health Center? I think you'd be great for it." I really am so grateful for that time of not knowing anything, of being open and absorbent to the ways that movement work was happening where I lived. And starting my time at Feminist Women's Health Center, I honestly followed suit really similarly. I decided to make a list of all of the prominent, predominantly Black women, I'm not even going to lie, who were doing reproductive health rights and justice work. And I started making a list so that I could make some lunch dates, some coffee dates, so that I could come to their offices and understand the scope of their work, so that I could touch the hem of their garment. I wanted to understand where I could fit and how I could contribute and what I had to learn. And those relationships have been long-standing. I know that level of earnestness and greenness did not diminish people's opinion of what I was capable of. No one treated me as if I didn't belong or as if I was a waste of their time. People poured in. People invested in my growth, in my development, in helping me to find my way. I cherish those relationships. And I know people who organize with me know that I am often talking about the ways that when we build authentic trust, when we are endeared to one another, that allows for us to go so much further in our work. We're always going to have opportunities where we're working with people that we don't particularly like. And you don't have to be best friends in order to do amazing work. But I deeply believe that trust and humility allow for so much magic and creativity in our spaces. When I say humility, I want to stay on this for just a second, because I also think that there is a way, I heard a little bit in one of the previous sessions, that oftentimes as people of color, as people who are socialized as women and girls, as people who are often pushed to the margins, there are spoken and unspoken messages that we receive that tell us to be small. That being small is a survival strategy. Being able to show up and be under the radar and not ruffle any feathers and not cause any conflict and not complain and be nice and sweet. Those are all things that helped our ancestors survive. There's reasons why respectability has persisted, because for many people, if I can dress as nice as possible, if I can be as sweet and submissive as possible, that's the way I'm going to make it out of here alive. And so I don't discount where that comes from, but I do challenge us to continue to question that voice that speaks towards imposter syndrome. Being humble to me is about acknowledging, naming, and owning my capacity, my capability, my competence, and also recognizing that same thing in all of the people that I'm working alongside. It means that I trust my ideas, and I know my ideas are not always the right ones. I believe in my understanding and my intelligence, but I also know that there are lots of people who know things I don't know. I'm often talking within our work at Feminist Women's Health Center about how we have to be able to recognize the gifts, the talents, the skills, the expertise that we have to give and bring that fully, while also making space for all of the other gifts and talents and strengths and expertise that exist around us. There's space for all of it that complements one another. There are things that I know how to do that other people may not. And there is a multitude of things that I don't know how to do, that I don't even want to try. I don't want to learn. I want to make space, and I want to support, and I want to cheerlead the people who are doing the things that I cannot do. And I want to find the ways that those things lock into one another to get us further than we could get alone. I think that one of the things that I heard in one of the earlier sessions, there's so much power in voices collected together, singing the same song. Even if they are in harmony with one another, somebody taking the high note, somebody taking the low note, what beauty that makes. So I just want us to continue to think about, where are those forces, those voices that are convincing us that we need to stay small, that we need to dull our shine, that we need to say less, and just questioning, who told me that? Who taught me that? Is that actually getting me what I need? It doesn't mean we take up all the space. It just means that we understand the power that we have to give and how it fits in this big constellation, in this deep ecosystem, in this interwoven tapestry that we're trying to do called a movement. I think leadership is a really challenging thing for me. I have spent so much of my life thinking about how to dismantle power, thinking about what it means to disrupt power structures and hierarchy and ways that oppression keeps us from being able to progress and to grow and to be whole and to be healthy. So I find a lot of difficulty holding power. I know that I'm in a powerful position. I know that I have a lot of privilege, and I know that the professional power that I hold affects people's lives. And that's heavy. It's sometimes it's painful. At the same time, I do think that power is not just about being in charge. It's not just about telling people what to do. It's not just about being the final decision maker. Leadership is also about building alongside other people. Leadership is about being able to sharpen, being able to listen and take in all of the different ingredients that help us to get to our final destination, and perhaps putting them in a different order than they were presented to you. Perhaps being able to identify who is the best suited for this task, to speak to this audience, to write this bill, to draw this flyer, but the leader is not the person who is always doing all of the things. The leader is the person who can help to recognize and deploy people at their best, can also help to refine and reflect back to people some of the best things that they have to offer. We don't necessarily have to have positional power to lead in that way. Being able to bring others along with you, being able to break down things that seem hard and complicated in a way that they can be easily understood, in a way that they could be fully absorbed, being able to listen in a way that activates people because maybe they haven't been thoroughly heard. Taking what you've learned from other people and being able to apply it towards something that hasn't been accomplished before. I think that I find that it's really humbling. Yeah, I hate to stick on this word, but I find that it's just really humbling to be able to step back and support people and give them the tools that they need to be their very best selves. Collaboration and cooperation, working alongside others, doesn't mean that there's no conflict. It requires time and trust and tenacity to have authentic relationships that can sustain movement building. I think that being able to work with a clear vision and communicate that clear vision and have other people's visions fold in towards the same direction is the power that we're trying to build in Georgia. The power that I actually think we've been really successful at building in Georgia. The last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is, among the many things that make this work hard, is how we survive it. Because it's not just the imposter syndrome and the ways that oppression has conditioned us to behave in the world that makes the work hard. It's also the fact that we have constant threats against the things that we stand for, not just abortion, but the intersecting issues that we find so important. The people who are holding power have great incentive to stall and stop and sabotage our work, because the work that we are doing dissipates that power and puts it in the hands of people The work that we're doing centers the people who have been the most neglected. The work that we're doing uproots the very systems that have taken thousands of years to uphold. And so it can be really difficult to maintain motivation in the face of such opposition. When we have such huge heartbreaks, when we see injustice being rewarded time and time and time again, that is debilitating. We often are practicing, celebrating the small wins because the losses can feel so catastrophic. We know that people's literal lives hang in the balance in some of these decisions. People's existence is being threatened. People's humanity is being threatened. But the practice is to imagine an impossible future. The practice is to deeply believe in your core, in your guts, in your bones, that different is possible. White supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy steal our ability to have radical imagination. And so it is our exercise to push through those oppressive systems and imagine greater, imagine bigger, imagine harder. And once we can practice and cultivate that, build that muscle, build that imagination muscle, believe in science fiction, literally imagine things that we've never seen before. Being able to take that and then refine it in a way that we can give it as a gift to others, that we can use that hope, we can use that imagination, we can use that liberated future as a tool to bring other folks along, to share what we have envisioned, so that there will be more of us. I can't take credit for this. I know that I did not come up with this by myself, but the analogy I use all the time is that, rage and fear, those things are absolutely catalysts. We're seeing it happen right now in real time. This terrible, awful, really bad thing has happened. And it is catalyzing a lot of people to action that maybe have never taken action before. But rage is lighter fluid. Big ignition. But you cannot heat your home with lighter fluid. You cannot sustain your energy with lighter fluid. Hope is the thing that will burn. Hope is the thing that I am working towards, something that will probably not happen in my lifetime, but I know it's possible. And therefore I am tenacious about it. I will never let it go. I am holding on to that radical future. And everything I do, in the small things and the large, is contributing towards that liberated future. I know where I'm going, and I want as many people as possible to go there with me. So I'm hopeful that you can identify what you need to practice that radical imagination. What are the circumstances and conditions that will help you to imagine, help you to vision, help you to see clearly? What does 100 years from now look like? What does 200 years from now look like? Working our way backwards towards, what can I do today that's going to get me closer to that 200-year vision? The last thing I'll say, I know that I'm probably out of time. I want to make sure that there's time for you all to have real action steps to move forward with, is that imagined future, that radical future that is built upon the legacy of everything that our ancestors have done to get us to here. We deserve to survive to see it. And so it is critical that we take care of ourselves and each other so that we can survive to see it. We can believe in and be invested in the thing that we are building together, and we can rest, and we can laugh, and we can have pleasure, and we can watch television, and we can be frivolous. There's space for all of it. And it is important that we are able to build whole lives separate from feeling that we have to martyr ourselves for this work. We know how important abortion is. Also, your rest is important. Also, drinking water is important. Also, eating lunch is important. Also, taking breaks are important. And the beautiful thing about movement building is the more of us there are, the more ability we have to contract and swell so that people can sit down, so that people can rest. If there are more of us, there are more of us to carry us across that finish line. So I'm excited about everything that you all learned today. I hope that some of what I shared connects with you and helps you to feel like you have the stamina to build on today. I hope, if nothing else, that you're able to build relationships with both the people who presented work today and the people who you participated with. Because that is how we build a movement. That is how we continue a legacy. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kwajelyn. Tell me in the chat, is this a luminary in our movement or not? We know the answer. Thank you so much for being here. This is exactly the words, if you've been watching the chat, these are the words that folks needed to hear. They've been, I think the truth has been living inside of us, and hearing this said is meaningful for many of us. I think new to the movement and been in the movement for a while. We're all feeling it. Appreciate you so much. Y'all, I am going to move straight from this energy to asking and telling about what comes next. And we have just a few minutes left, but I promise I will do my best to make it worth your while. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And one more time, gratitude for our amazing keynote speaker. Gratitude for all of the speakers, trainers, teachers who have come earlier in the day and last night, the healers, those of you who came to learn, those of you who held space for processing. Here we go. We are back in wrap up land. So this was going to be the opening slide of our session. It is time to join up. And we have just heard from Kwajelyn about building the movement for the future. Everything that we've learned today, study is important and doing is also important. And putting these together is what builds the movement. Being here today, learning what we learned, it doesn't mean that we've made change, right? So what happens next is really up to each of us. No organizing summit would actually be complete if we did not, number one, celebrate our wins. Number two, share campaign strategy news. Number three, take collective action together. And number four, share our commitments to each other for the future. So I'm going to start with, I think y'all have heard me say, but we celebrate wins. So while you are here in the chat, please tell us if you know of a win, and this can be a win in your community, your city. It can be abortion related. It can be reproductive justice related. It can be from a parallel movement. You tell us, what kind of wins have you heard of or have you been part of that it's time for me to make sure everybody knows about? I will acknowledge a win that we have mentioned several times today. And I just want you to know it's not the only one. So we need to get better and my slides need to be better at naming the various kinds of momentum that have been made, even in the past days, weeks, and months. So celebrating a win, I'm asking you to mark your calendars for the evening of August 31st. We're going to have a happy hour to actually sit down and celebrate with every person who helped turn out petition signatures, who made comments at Atlanta City Council, the people who were showing up and having these meetings and helped write the policy, for $300,000 to be redistributed from the City of Atlanta budget to abortion funding. we're just going to kick it. We're going to be together and feel excited. All right, so save the date, August 31st, happy hour time in Atlanta. We share campaign strategy news. So what do I have to share with you? Here's, it's also a win. The Reproductive Freedom Act is rolling. So what has happened lately? We have had an exponential increase in state lawmakers saying they're going to help introduce legislation that addresses all aspects of abortion barriers that are present in Georgia law. Does that mean it's going to pass today? No, it can't, because we're not in legislative session yet. Does that mean it's going to pass this legislative session? No, it can't, because we haven't gotten a majority of the people in seats to commit to this yet. But we are building political power. In the meantime, we are talking to legislators. And as Allison said in the recent session on local policy change, sometimes it looks like this stuff came out of nowhere, right? A terrible thing happened, and now lawmakers say, I guess it is in the hands of the state. But who's been telling them that? All of us, okay? So this momentum is not going to build itself or continue itself, and this is where we take collective action. Here's a petition. We have just launched it. It is tinyurl.com/Georgia Reproductive Freedom Act, Georgia RFA. The point of this petition is to tell state lawmakers that we want reproductive freedom in Georgia. 70% of Georgians support abortion access and legality. And so what we need to do is make our voices heard and continue to combine our numbers and make our numbers seen and felt. So when you sign this petition, what happens next is we are going to start to map out where reproductive freedom supporters are, where they live and vote, so that we can tell lawmakers, did you know there are people in your district who want reproductive freedom, and we are eager for you to sit down with them because they have some questions for you. So the first step is mapping out our power. And we can't do that if we don't do good research, and that means we need to be spreading this around as well. I'll let you in on this. We have not officially launched this petition yet, but it would be so exciting if you all help the petition get to its first 100 signatures, so that once it goes out broadly, it will already have some support behind it. So please go there to that link right now. This is the moment of collective action. Sometimes a summit ends in like we are all going canvassing to talk to neighbors in the neighborhood about what we're doing. Today, our collective action is to sign this petition, and then, because an organizing summit is about taking the next step after the one action, be an organizer. Send it to at least 3 friends. If I were you, I wouldn't do it in like your group chat or on your Facebook page. I would send it to a friend individually, and I would specifically make an ask. I'm at a gathering for abortion access in Georgia, and we're going to organize to tell state lawmakers to roll back abortion bans. We just launched a new petition. Can you sign it and help me get our first 100 signatures? That's an example. That's the example I'm using that I'm asking you all to sign this petition with. So if you can literally take out your phone and make this ask right now, that would mean a lot. It would mean that it is our first collective action in this summit as a gathering, and that begins our next sets of commitments. So I believe you've got a green button kind of below the screen where it says sign the RFA petition. You can click that green button, and that is also going to take you to the link. Go ahead and do it. I'm not even kidding. And if you do it, tell us in the chat that you did it, and we can cheer you, because every person who helps roll this out is another win and a movement building moment. All right. And then finally, we make commitments to each other. This is probably the most important part. I think because organizing is about building relationships, we can't grow our power authentically without growing our relationships. This is something that Kwajelyn also talked about. And a way that we grow our relationships over time is by making commitments to each other. And so I don't want this to be the last time that we see each other. I hope that what this really means is you're here because your next step is to become more involved in the movement. Our purpose and strategy is calling for these next steps, and we need as many of you who are willing to take that step to be a leader in these areas to do so. So the strategy calls for election organizing, engaging and supporting voters between now and November, That may look like registering voters, helping them with their paperwork, calling or knocking on doors to make sure that they know where and when to vote, or being at the vote station, the polling station on vote days to monitor that everything is going as it should and make sure that voters' access to the ballot is being respected. Number 2, direct action in a campaign. We are looking for constituent meetings with state lawmakers before they take office again in January. Like I said, this momentum doesn't sustain itself. So what we want to do is sit down with the people who currently represent us and make sure that they know what we care about and what our priorities are, and ask them what can they commit to doing. That is something that there's basically a template for how we have a constituent meeting. And if you've never done it before, there are people in this room who have done it before, and we're going to do it together. And finally, campaign building. The first step in campaign building statewide, you may have seen that some of these cities and counties are moving to take measures for reproductive justice policies locally. If you're in a city that has not done that, we want to organize a meeting in your area to start pushing for policies together, and we can help you do that. The local power building is also what's going to help us build statewide power so that we can one day get this Reproductive Freedom Act passed. So tell us in the chat what commitment you're making today, and we are going to do it one at a time. If you are committing to being part of election organizing, put election organizing in the chat. I just want to hear from you that you are going to be doing some kind of election organizing, and I'm asking you to say so that I can follow up with you, because we're literally going to make sure you connect to the organizer who's leading these efforts. Oh my God, I'm just looking at the chat and I'm seeing the wins. I'm so excited to see. I see the people who are saying done. We're at 105 signatures. Some of y'all are sharing. This is amazing. Okay, I want to know who is excited to do election organizing. So put that in the chat, and then we're gonna move on to our next one. If you are going to commit to this group that you're gonna get involved in campaign direct action, please put campaign direct action in the chat. Wow, okay, the chat is really building up. Sharon, Amy, DJ, Sierra, Jenny, y'all are doing election organizing. Carly, don't know how, but you want to. You're gonna know how. We are gonna follow up with you. Let's make sure to acknowledge and appreciate these commitments that your peers are making. Campaign direct action. Who's doing campaign direct actions? Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I hope I know your name by the end of this. Amy Warnock, Raiha, Amanda Leppert Gomez, Naomi, Jordan. Oh, Jordan, you're up for election organizing. Yes. Okay. Campaign direct action has got some folks. And we're moving forward. Campaign building. Organizing a meeting in your area to start pushing for a reproductive justice policy in your city or county. If you've never done that before, there's people in this room who have. You are going to hear from an organizer. This isn't like go out and do this step, because organizing is actually all about staying in relationships so that we stay in alignment on our strategy. I want to know, put in the chat, are you going to be part of campaign building? Amanda wants to be part of campaign building. Nandi wants to be part of campaign building. This is really exciting because I want you to be part of campaign building. All right, and Lisi's going to be part of campaign direct action. All of y'all, there's a reason I'm not asking you to just blanket say yes to all three of these things. Not everybody can do all of the things, as we heard just in our keynote just now. Not everybody needs to do all of the things. What we need to do is bring more people in the movement so that we are building power in a way that is sustainable for all of us. I see Jenny is going to be doing campaign building. So is Sierra. So is Sharon. We're going to be reaching out to all of you. I'm really excited for that part. And I want you to look out for, check your emails and just know it's not a, what's the word? It's not a mass email when you get an email from one of us. When you get a text from one of us, it is literally me or Lisi or Navi, like behind the phone, hoping you say yes. I am so excited and happy that we are at a full day, and it's 5:07, so it's time to go. Is there anything else that needs to be said, Olivia, before we go?
I wanted to add one more big thank you to all of our volunteers today. Shout out all of our moderators and folks who helped behind the scenes.
Thank you so much to our moderators and our volunteers. Thank you to our processing person. Thank you to Olivia for organizing all of us through this day. I'm so excited to reach out to you all and to support our next steps, because joining a movement, and that means you're not going to be part of Amplify, you're going to be part of an organization that is part of Amplify. And that's how we can really scale up and build this power. So thank you and have a great evening. Drink your water, get some rest, and go have fun.